I'm Dr. Jura Lasas. I'm a neurobiologist with a PhD and over 15 years of experience in clinical research and drug development. Today, I'll be answering your questions about how to recognize perimenopause, what stage you're in, and how to tell the difference between hormonal changes and things like burnout. How do I know if I'm in perimenopause? Wonderful question. Perimenopause is a pattern, not a single symptom. Your cycle starts changing, shorter, longer, heavier, lighter, skipping months entirely. That's your ovaries signaling that they are close to losing most of their follicles or eggs. But the cycle changes are just the obvious part. You can have perimenopausal symptoms without any obvious changes to your cycles. It is surprising, but you can get an answer to your question with a blood test. If you're considering testing estrogen or progesterone, I wouldn't bother. Their levels are so unpredictable that you will get a different answer on different days and even different times of the day. FSH, follicle stimulating hormone, is used to confirm if you are in postmenopause. However, during perimenopause, it fluctuates as wildly as estrogen. The hormonal changes affect the entire body, but the symptoms you actually notice first, most of them come from the brain. Temperature regulation, mood, sleep, attention, pain perception. Estrogen receptors are located in the brain regions that control temperature regulation, mood, sleep, attention, pain perception. You can't tell you're in perimenopause from age alone, but age plus a pattern of symptoms is usually the best clue you have. Beyond period changes, you might have hot flashes, night sweats, sleep problems, mood swings, anxiety, irritability, brain fog, fatigue, vaginal dryness, more frequent urination, joint pain, headaches. If you're over 40 and you have several of these symptoms, plus some cycle changes, that pattern strongly suggests perimenopause. What stage of perimenopause am I in? It's tricky to understand which stage you're in. Your doctor won't do it based on which symptoms you have or how severe they are. The only reliable staging system we have, both clinically and in research, is based exclusively on your period patterns. Not how you feel, but how you bleed. The system is called straw plus 10. Early transition starts when your once predictable cycle begin to vary by about 7 days or more from your usual length. Late transition starts when you have gaps of 60 days or longer between periods. In early perimenopause, your periods still come fairly often, but the pattern is clearly different from your lifelong normal. Cycles get shorter, say from every 28 to 30 days down to every maybe 21 to 25, or they jump around by a week or more from month to month, often with heavier or more painful bleeding. What's actually happening hormonally is that your ovulation becomes less reliable. Progesterone drops first, and estrogen can actually spike higher and fluctuate more. That's why breast tenderness, heavy flow, worse PMS, migraines, anxiety, sleep disruption, all of these symptoms can get worse even though you're still bleeding regularly. If your cycles are still coming every month, but less predictably, you're likely in the early side. In late perimenopause, your ovaries are ovulating only occasionally. Periods become fewer and farther apart. You can have gaps of 60 days or more, sometimes several months without a period, and then one shows up again. Symptoms such as hot flashes, night sweats, vaginal dryness, and sleep problems often increase at this stage because estrogen is now dropping more consistently instead of spiking and crashing. If that sounds like you, you're getting closer to menopause. To place yourself, look back at least 12 to 18 months. If your periods are regular but different, most likely you are in early perimenopause. If your periods timing varies by more than a week, it's an early transition. If you are going 2 months or more between bleeds, you are in late transition. The most useful thing you can do is track your cycle dates and symptoms and bring that timeline to your doc, who's familiar with menopause staging. Am I in perimenopause or menopause? The simplest way to figure it out is by looking at your periods. Menopause is actually just a single date. It's the day of your last period, but once you've gone 12 full months with no bleeding and there's no other explanation like pregnancy, thyroid problems, or a medical procedure. Everything after that 12-month mark is postmenopause. And everything before that date is perimenopause. What age do perimenopause symptoms start? That's a good question. Perimenopause symptoms can begin at any point between mid-30s and early 50s. Most women start perimenopause in their 40s, often mid-40s. Perimenopause usually begins at about 4 to 8 years before the final period. If you want more science-based answers like this, you can subscribe to this channel for upcoming videos on performance, brain health, and hormonal changes. Let's see. What are the first symptoms of perimenopause? I really like this question. The first thing most women notice, and they know it's directly related to their hormones, is that their periods change. Cycles get a bit shorter or a bit longer. The gap between periods varies by week or more. Flow swings from heavier to lighter than you're used to. This happens because you don't ovulate easily due to the reduced number of eggs in your ovaries. But what catches most women off guard is that many of the first perimenopause symptoms are actually brain-related, even though they show up as body sensations. New or worsening insomnia, feeling wired at night, mood swings, anxiety, brain fog, these often appear early and can show up before you even have a dramatic hot flash. That's because changing estrogen levels directly affect brain regions that regulate sleep, mood, attention, and how you handle stress. So if you can genuinely feel like your personality is changing, and many women simply say, I do not feel like myself. Other early symptoms are more subtle and easy to blame on stress or aging. Unusual fatigue, a drop in libido, new or worse headaches or migraines, greater sensitivity to alcohol or poor sleep. Some women notice night sweats before hot flashes. They wake up overheated and damp without even realizing hormones are involved. You also see early bladder and vaginal changes, like more frequent urges to pee, more UTIs, or mild vaginal dryness, even while your periods are still coming completely regularly. Unfortunately, there's no single first symptom that every woman gets. The key is the pattern. New brain-driven symptoms plus changes in your usual cycle, typically starting in your 40s. Keeping a simple diary of periods, flow symptoms for a few months makes that pattern easier to see and helps your doc rule out other causes like thyroid problems or low iron. Please, if your symptoms are sudden, severe, or come with very heavy bleeding, chest pain, or severe new headaches, get checked immediately rather than assuming it's just hormones. Can perimenopause cause extreme anger? Well, yes. I'm very well familiar with this one. Perimenopause can absolutely cause episodes of extreme anger for some, and this is a recognized medical symptom. As estrogen and progesterone start fluctuating and then gradually declining, they disrupt brain neurotransmitters like serotonin, dopamine, and GABA that normally help keep your stress response in check. Without going too deep into the brain mechanism, changes in the neurotransmitters can lower your emotional buffer. So frustrations that you could just brush off before feel unbearable. That definitely can lead to rage, even when objectively it shouldn't. The hormone swings act directly on the amygdala, which processes threat and emotion. More active amygdala, which is not being appropriately suppressed by your prefrontal cortex, since it's also affected by the hormone changes, can make you more reactive. Anger usually comes as part of a broader cluster of changes. You have more frequent or intense mood swings. You feel overwhelmed. You have increased anxiety. You have more brain fog. Many women describe going from calm to furious very quickly, then feeling guilty or confused afterward, especially because the anger seems to come out of nowhere. How can I stop menopause rage? Well, thanks for that question. The honest answer is you can't fully switch it off. I wish it was that easy. But you can dramatically reduce how intense it gets and how often it hits. Rage rarely shows up alone. It's usually part of a cluster of irritability, anxiety, and low mood. To deal with rage well, you'll need to address several things. Start with biology. Your hormones are part of the reason you get the rage, so it makes sense to stabilize them before you start implementing other coping strategies. Please discuss hormone replacement therapy with your doctor. HRT can be recommended as first-line treatment for mood disturbances. Many women notice their anger eases within 4 to 6 weeks. Usually, docs prescribe transdermal estradiol with micronized progesterone. On the other hand, progesterone can sometimes make anger worse in some. So, if your mood gets worse after starting, the dose or type may need adjusting. You can also turn to psychological tools. Menopause-focused CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, has solid clinical trial data showing that it can reduce distress, improve sleep, and even improve quality of life. It helps you catch the catastrophic story. I'm a terrible person. I'm destroying my career. And work with it before it gets out of control. Mindfulness-based programs can also help you reduce anxiety and stress. I've also seen very interesting data on mind-body practices like yoga, tai chi, and even jazz dance, who knew, that showed real improvements in anxiety and depression. There are some things you can do when you feel rage rising, when you feel the heat, the jaw tensing, the urge to snap. If you can step away, remove yourself from the situation. Do 3 to 5 minutes of slow diaphragmatic breathing. If you do not have minutes, do a simple physiological sigh. It takes seconds. Inhale twice, then exhale. Then decide what to say. That pause between the feeling and the behavior is everything. You're giving your prefrontal cortex, the thinking brain, to catch up and step in. The bottom line is that you need to find what works for you. Maybe combine HRT with CBT. Maybe simply getting enough sleep and doing breathing exercises every morning will work wonders for you. You need to find a formula that works for you. How do you treat mood swings during perimenopause? Thank you for that question. Mood swings during perimenopause are very common. Your estrogen levels are quite unpredictable at this time. And research shows actually it's variability itself, not just the low levels, that triggers the mood swings, especially when you're already under stress. If the symptoms are severe, the best approach, layer 3 things together: medical treatment, psychological support, and lifestyle changes. On the medical side, there are 2 main options. If what you're experiencing is depression or anxiety, antidepressants are frontline and they work well. Your doctor would suggest the best option. But if your mood symptoms are clearly tied to hormonal changes and you don't have a major depression diagnosis, HRT could be recommended. Estrogen therapy can have antidepressant effects, and it can also be combined with antidepressants if you need it. Menopause-focused cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, can be a great option. It has been shown to reduce anxiety, depression, improve sleep, and quality of life. A structured program, usually 6 to 8 sessions with someone who understands hormonal transitions, can change your life. Finally, pay attention to the basics. Sleep, movement, stress load. Studies consistently show that menopausal symptom severity tracks with psychological symptom severity. So, when you treat your night sweats, when you protect your sleep, when you exercise regularly, your mood can stabilize too. Yoga, Tai Chi, even walking can help with mood swings. Haven't mentioned it yet, but it's truly important to reduce chronic mental overload, which can be quite tough for a working professional with a family. You have to prioritize yourself at this phase of your life. Let's see. Can perimenopause cause cognitive decline? Perimenopause can cause changes in how your brain performs. I understand there's a lot of fear about it. If you don't feel yourself, you're not imagining it. However, it's not the beginning of dementia. Large, long-term studies do find a decline in specific domains in some women. Verbal learning, verbal memory, attention, working memory, processing speed. But your brain doesn't fall apart. Your executive function, which is your ability to plan, strategize, make decisions, tends to stay the same. For the majority of healthy women, these changes are very, very small. They stay within the normal ranges of what's expected, and they tend to stabilize after the transition. Researchers describe perimenopause as a window of vulnerability, and I would like to add a window of opportunity for cognition. Since it is a window, it opens early transition, and for most women, it closes. You go back to what's normal for you for the most part. I'd like to offer a different perspective on the brain changes. The brain is simply adapting to a new hormonal environment to function at its best for that period of your life. Hormones are changing, estrogen and progesterone decrease over time, FSH increases over time, and so are other hormones affected. It's not a gentle decrease, it's a period of turbulence that affects every part of your brain and your body. It's not the first time, by the way, that a woman's brain undergoes restructuring or remodeling. But it is the time when women and society interpret these changes as bad or as decline. Puberty and pregnancy also change your brain. It's a very exciting area of research right now. We see gray matter, which is your neurons, volume changes in how neurons connect, adaptations in how the brain uses energy. We also see changes in all of the phases of a woman's life. In each phase, some of what initially looks like loss later recovers or reorganizes into something new, and I would like to say beautiful. It's not dementia or progressive decline. Not remembering where you put your phone is different from slowly forgetting what the phone is for. Let's see. What is the difference between burnout and perimenopause? I really like this question. Burnout and perimenopause look almost identical on paper. Fatigue, brain fog, irritability, poor sleep, these symptoms overlap, and that's why so many women get the wrong explanation. There are patterns that help separate these two. The first thing to look at is context. Burnout is tied exclusively to work. If you dread Monday coming and you feel better after 2 weeks away from work, most likely it's burnout. Perimenopause doesn't behave like that. Your symptoms don't disappear on vacation. You can get them on weekends at home, on a quiet Saturday morning. When there is no clear context for your symptoms, most likely it's perimenopause. The second signal is how you feel about the work itself. Maybe you become cynical, Tasks that used to matter feel pointless. That detachment from the job, not from your kids or your hobbies or your friends, just the job, that's not perimenopause. That's most likely burnout. The third clue is physical. Hot flashes, night sweats, sudden heat intolerance, heart racing, that's not burnout most likely. A lot of women brush off mild heat waves or occasional night sweats as stress, but most likely that's your hormones changing. And the fourth is the timeline. Burnout usually has a story behind it. For example, maybe you got a promotion that doubled your workload, or there's a restructure that wiped out your team, or even years of pushing without any recovery. Perimenopause follows a completely different clock. It's tied to your biology, not your job history. The tricky part is that they can feed into each other. Burnout can affect your symptoms, and your symptoms can increase the likelihood of burnout. If you only address burnout but ignore the hormonal side, or only treat menopausal symptoms while chronic stress continues, recovery is much more difficult. Both sides of the picture usually need your attention. If you want to find out more, I've created a separate video on burnout. Perimenopause can look different from person to person, but the underlying biology is the same. Understanding what's happening is the first step to managing it effectively. If you have more questions, leave them in the comments. I'll be answering them in upcoming videos. See you next week.